Welcome to We're Talking About Practice episode 12, where we talk about all things related to basketball practice planning. And today we have Coach Tyler Kepkay here, who used to play for the Canadian national men's team, also a former pro player and now turned coach. We're going to go over efficiency. If you're not the fastest, not the tallest, not the strongest, you need efficiency. And how do you do that? We talk a lot about how all these details add up to make you an efficient player. So if you're excited about this, let's get started. Hi coaches, welcome to We're Talking About Practice. I'm really excited to have Tyler Kepkay here, so I'm going to let him introduce himself right now.
Thanks Keith for having me. My name is Tyler Kepkay. I'm a former Division I player at the University of Utah, former Canadian men's senior national team player for 3 summers, played professionally in Germany for 4 years. Now I'm playing in Asia and Hong Kong, and as well as has started an academy here called Impact Basketball Academy.
All right, so I've trained with Tyler a lot, so I know a lot about him, so I'm gonna go straight into his philosophy. His main philosophy is about efficiency. So tell us about what is efficiency, why is it important, and then later on we'll talk about how to train efficiency.
Yeah, so for me, basically being efficient, the best example that I can use is actually of myself, from playing against guys. Feedback that I have gotten against people I've played against is I'm not a tall guy, I'm only about 6 feet, but they say I play like I'm 6'5", meaning that the way I cover ground, my angles, the way I get to the hoop, the way I create my space, I do it in a manner which I don't use a lot of dribbles. I'm very efficient in my footwork and getting where I want to go. So in a nutshell, that's what efficiency is from my point of view.
Okay, so why is efficiency important in a 5-on-5 game?
Well, I mean, as you go up in levels, efficiency at a young age obviously is less important, but as you get older, as you go up in levels, the speed of the game increases, the length of players, the size of players increases, which means the space on the court gets smaller, the timing to make decisions gets quicker, and if you're not efficient in the way you move, your ball handling, your footwork, your shooting, your decision making, if you lack efficiency in any of those areas, the higher level you go up, the more you're going to become exposed.
Okay, so give us a very concrete example of an efficient player.
Of an efficient player. Well, a great example that I can think of is Chris Paul. He's very efficient. There's not a lot of wasted movement with the way he moves, the way he plays, and as also with his decision making, you can see he doesn't waste time. Like he comes down, he reads the floor, and Chris Paul I like using as an example because I remember him saying that when he went from college to the NBA, he used to have 2 dribbles to make that decision, and then when he got to the NBA, he's like, now I only have 1 dribble to make that decision. He's a very good example of a player who I think is very efficient in how he plays.
Okay, so you're saying especially the smaller guys, the not so athletic guys, really need this efficiency.
Yes.
Okay.
Of course, Steve Nash as well. I gotta throw him in there. Steve Nash is another guy who's extremely efficient with his movement. And that's another thing too. People think efficiency just comes to the skill that's required in basketball, whether it's ball handling, shooting, footwork, but it's actually the way your body moves, right? So as much as it's about on the court, you need to work off the court in the weight room with the physio, with the movement specialist, so that you can move efficiently as well in conjunction with having efficient ball handling, efficient shooting, right? A lot of skill coaches, from my experience in basketball, they lack that knowledge. Okay, well, I'm trying to make this player, work on this attack move and load in a certain position, but his hips, his knee, his ankles, they're lacking mobility, he's lacking strength to be able to get into that position. So again, that's another form of efficiency, right?
Okay, so give us a counterexample of anybody out there that's a prime example of inefficiency.
That's inefficient. I mean, a lot of wasted movement. If I'm thinking at a high level, for example, I mean, he's a very good player, but I think Kyrie Irving does a lot of extra stuff, that he doesn't need to do a lot of times.
So what an example of that?
Well, it's just the way he handles the ball. Obviously, he has a great handle, but there's times that, he's doing more showmanship, trying to put on a little bit of a show, than, keeping it simple, and he could get the same result without maybe the higher risk he's taking to put on some showmanship, right?
Okay, so we're gonna get into details. So showmanship move, give me an example of that.
It's not really a showmanship move. I wouldn't call it that. It's just sometimes when, I won't use him as an example anymore, but just when the example I use is if I'm coming down and I'm attacking someone, I'm picking a shoulder and attacking, and then off of their, how they play me on that, I'm making my decision. I'm reading it. They back up, I'm pulling up. They cut me off, I'm changing direction. But a lot of times, guys will come down and you can see that they're pre-planning in their head, okay, I'm going to come down and I'm going to hit him with an inside-out crossover in between my legs. That's inefficient, right? You're already planning steps that are unnecessary. I want to see what he reacts to my one hard decision. Let's see what the defense does. When I make one hard, quick decision, okay, they react a certain way, I'm reacting the other way. Right?
Okay, so when you're reading a defense, especially for youth athletes, that is really, really hard.
Yeah.
How do you train that?
So, especially with the younger kids, in the way that I like to teach is that right away you're limiting their dribbles. Okay, so in any competitive situation, when you're playing one-on-one, you're always playing one-on-one with a dribble limit. At a young age, maybe it's 5 dribbles. As they get older, more talented, more efficient, you limit 4 dribbles, 3 dribbles. I remember I read an article, on Kobe Bryant, and he goes, guys ask me about, what's my go-to move? What's this with that? He's like, I take one hard dribble to the right or left, and then I play off of that. They back up, I shoot it. They stay with me, I keep attacking, right? He's like, I don't have a go-to move. He says, all I need is one dribble. With one dribble, I can create what I want.
Okay, so other than limiting dribbles, are there any other tricks that you have, any drills to teach this really fast? Because in that split second, you have to read and then...
Yeah, so as far as that's more in terms of playing, right? So learning to play with less dribbles, dribbling with a purpose, right? That's another saying that I like to use is dribble with a purpose, because a lot of times at a younger age, as soon as they catch the ball, they're putting it down right away. They're not even looking. They're not looking to see, okay, rim, am I open to shoot, right? Everyone on the catch, your first look should be the rim. A lot of the younger kids, because, of this YouTube generation, the Instagram generation, where guys are on there dribbling 94 times in one spot, all the kids have that in their head now. So as soon as they catch it, they're putting it down right away, but there's no purpose. They're not dribbling with a purpose, which is something that I really like to preach, is that, every time you dribble, there's a reason for it. If you don't have a reason to dribble, you're either shooting it or moving it. So.
Okay, so when you're reading defender, do you read their feet or shoulders, or where do you look?
In a one-on-one situation?
Yeah.
Yeah, so when I'm playing one-on-one, like I said, I'm reading their feet, I'm reading their hips, their shoulders, right? And then I'm making a decision where I'm gonna attack. And of course there's different situations of one-on-one. Am I playing off the catch right away, or do I have am I playing off triple threat? I have a pivot foot and I'm playing off a jab series, right? So depending on the situation, again, I'm making quick reads. Is he backed off? I'm shooting it. If it's 1 foot higher, I'm attacking it, and then playing off of that, right? I guess the best thing is less is more, right? Simplify. That's my...
So efficiency ties in with simplicity.
Yeah.
Okay, so bring the other side. Do you see common drills that you see other coaches do and you're cringing? It's maybe it's, I don't know, some crazy...
everyone has their own way of doing things. I don't think anyone should say, this, I'm better than you or whatever. Sometimes do I see things and I disagree with them? Of course, but people would probably disagree with a lot of things that I do too. However, I think the most important thing is that when you see a coach doing something and you ask them, what's the method behind this madness? What is your purpose? What are you trying to get out of teaching this drill? If they can't answer that clearly, then it's probably not something that is, valuable to that player or whoever they're teaching, right? That's kind of the way that I go about it. And honestly, I've asked a lot of, I've watched a lot of skill trainers, whatever, teaching, and then I say, okay, so what's the method behind the madness? What's the point of this? And then they'll have, a lot of times they'll have a blank look on their face, and that's a problem. If they don't have a reason and an understanding and a belief of why they think they should be teaching it, that's the biggest problem that I see, and that's when I would question, that drill or that skill they're teaching.
Okay, so when you're planning a practice, like what is the decision making behind it? What are your thought processes? Because you said every drill you have has a purpose.
Yeah. So I mean, again, are we talking about a team practice where I'm coaching a team? Are we talking about an individual skills practice? About a team. So I mean, with a team, if I'm coaching a team and I'm setting up my practice, I'm going to come in, let's say we have a standard 2-hour practice, I'm going to start off probably the first 45 minutes to an hour. That's going to be skill work, but it's going to be directly tied into what our values and principles are as a team. So for example, what we run on offense, right? My skill work is going to be based on getting guys in those positions that they'll be in our offense, and be working on the skills that they'll have to execute in those situations in our offense. So for example, if we run a lot of pick and roll, you can guarantee that there's going to be a lot of pick and roll skill work for our big guys, for our small guys, coming off, getting the spots, working on different passes, different angles, our big guys rolling at different ways, different angles, right? So right away, my skill work's going to be based on what our team principles are as a team. And then same thing, skill work isn't just, everyone thinks skill work means offense. Well, defense is a skill too. This mentality that defense, here coaches, it's 90% heart, 10% skill. So that is, I think it's even more important to be efficient on defense than it is on offense, because unless you're blessed with extremely long arms, 6'8", freak athlete, to be at the highest level as an under-athletic, undersized person, efficiency on defense, the way you move, the way you close out, the angles you take, understanding angles, timing, that is so important, and that is a skill. Just because you can work as hard as you want, you could be working super hard, your maximum capacity, but if you're not working smart and enhancing your skill as a defender, it doesn't matter, because you're going to get to a level where players are so good on offense, you can try as hard as you want. It won't matter.
So I'm personally really impressed by the way you teach defense, and things you take for granted. A lot of people out there don't know. So let's go through the details of of defense, like everything. So
you mean like the skill of defending?
Yeah.
We'll talk about the skill. Okay, because there's team concepts of defense, obviously team defense, and then I'm referring to the individual skill of defense, just like the individual skill of an offensive player, right?
So let's start with one person, close out, and then we move to, I think what you're teaching is it like the pack line defense? It's like sort of like...
Oh, you mean on the team concept?
Eventually we'll move to team, but we start individual.
So individually,
what you do. What are the details?
So individually, okay, I mean, as brief as I can put it. For example, closing out, right? And close out, is one of the most important skills you have to have as a defender, because whenever you're in a recovery position, you are closing out. And, obviously in the game of basketball, everybody knows it's an offensive game. So the offensive player always has the advantage. But if you can become efficient and have a great closeout, be able to protect the drive, challenge the shot, make it tough, a lot of coaches are going to want you on their team, going to put you on the floor, right? A lot of coaches say that if you can come in and defend, you're going to play, because not a lot of guys can defend, not a lot of guys want to defend, right? They all want to play offense. So as far as the skill of closing out, it's about the angle you take, it's about the footwork, the chopping your feet, and then a lot of people get the first part right. Okay, they close out properly, they force, some coaches want you to force baseline, some force middle. I won't get into philosophies, I'll just get into the basic footwork. So a lot of players, they can sprint out, hard chop of the feet, proper hand positioning, but then as soon as they have to move, that's where the breakdown happens. And as soon as they have to, maybe they're closing out, the guy drives hard baseline. Okay, well now which foot do I move first, right? A lot of people, the inefficiency happens there. They move the wrong foot first. Okay, as soon as someone closing out to someone on the wing and the person attacks them hard to the middle, well the first inclination that everybody has is to open up, which is an inefficient movement. Right away, you're giving the middle. You know, especially if you're a baseline forcing team, you don't want to do that. If someone wants to attack you middle, you want to back up, keep your chest square to the sideline, and keep them over there. Let them run through your chest, not open the hips. Which again, that's a skill to learn, right? Which takes timing, which takes practice, and again, it also takes off-court work. Because, you know, if I'm running full speed, chopping my feet, closing out, but then I gotta load my hip to explode to my right or left, well, if I'm not in the weight room, not with the physio movement guy, working on my mobility, working on my strength, being able to get into those low-loaded positions, well then, it's gonna be hard for me to close out, right? And do it efficiently and properly. So, as far, you know, that's one defensive skill that I can give you right now.
Okay, so you're talking about a lot of stuff here. You're actually incorporating gym work, mobility work. So like let's say a player has the lack of ability to explode and back off, like you said, what kind of exercise can they do off court to?
Well, like I said, I mean, that would take an assessment from, you know, a good physio, a good strength and conditioning guy. But right away, as far as, you know, from my experience, even my own personal experience, a lot of times basketball players, because, you know, it's such a multi-directional sport, the hips, the glutes, everything is quite tight because, you know, you're constantly moving side to side, forward and back, right? So these areas get tight, and if you don't get them worked on and mobility, so simple mobility exercises, it's kind of hard to demonstrate now, but simple mobility exercises, especially with the hip flexors, the glutes, you know, activating the glutes, that's another thing too, is, you know, you got to make sure you have good glute activation, core activation, so that you can get in those loaded positions and explode out of them efficiently, right? Because a lot of times, I like using a closeout as an example because it's a tough thing to do, to run out, chop your feet, and then react right away. A lot of times where I said the inefficiency, where they move the wrong foot or move incorrectly, comes from a lack of mobility, lack of strength in that position. It's not necessarily just because they're doing it wrong, it's actually because their body won't let them do it properly, right?
All right, so we're talking about closeout. What other essential kind of like defensive scheme or skill do you think people need?
Well, I mean, the other thing, let's talk off the ball now, okay? So this is an on the ball situation, recovery situation, you know, off the ball, you know, this is kind of individual / team concept. You know, you watch guys off the ball, you know, when they're guarding someone and the ball is passed. This is very basic. Everyone's heard the term jump to the ball, right? But 90% of players, even at a high level, as soon as their guy passes the ball, they stand up, they turn, they look, and then they move. Well, you've just done 3 movements that are totally inefficient. As soon as my guy picks up the ball, I can see the direction he's throwing it. I don't need to turn and look and see where he's throwing it. I just need, as soon as the ball is going like this, leaving his fingers, I just need to be low and jumping to the ball. And then as I'm doing that, I can see the ball and see where I'm at, right? But if I just jump to the ball right away, it's going to lead me to the proper position. But, you know, that in itself is as basic as it sounds. Even at a high level, coaches are nagging on their guys to jump to the ball, right?
Okay, so what about rebounding?
Rebounding, yeah. I mean, rebounding is a skill. Everyone, again, obviously, you know, tougher guys, it helps to be tough and physical and, you know, work hard at it. You have to be willing to work to be a good rebounder, no question. But again, Dennis Rodman, Zach Randolph, these guys that are good rebounders, they work hard, they're physical, they're tough, but they're also very skilled at rebounding. They have a good idea of where the ball is going to be. They know how to get into the proper position. Again,
so what is proper position?
Well, I mean, proper position, again, part of that is what I call an EQ of, okay, when the shot's going up, some guys, they have a good understanding. They can see the ball, how it's coming in, if it's going to miss, where it's going to go. And then, okay, there's a guy in front of me that I need to get inside position on, right? They understand how to get inside position on him, right? Again, it's pretty technical. It's hard to explain in the short video. But that's the skill of rebounding is, you know, knowing where to be, when to be there, and how to be there, and how to get there. You know what I mean? So, yeah, again, rebounding is a skill.
Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is about kind of like team defense, and I also want to talk about one thing you preach is like spacing and movement, and the last one is actually like kind of hard to train. So we'll talk about it later. But like team defense, like how do you train the entire team to actually play the defense that you want?
Yeah, so I mean, team defense, again, there's hundreds of philosophies out there. So I won't get into a specific philosophy. I'll just say that to get a team to play the defense that you want, if you're coaching a team, you lay out your foundation. What are your team's principles on defense? As an example, let's say we're man-to-man. We pick up at half court. As soon as the ball's at half, we're picking up. What are we trying to do in our man-to-man defense? Are we trying to pressure? Put tons of pressure on there? Are we more trying to make teams play over us, pack it in, have teams, we're giving up a little bit of, shooting, but we're not letting anything inside, right? So right away, you want to lay your foundation, your principles. And then, once you have those are what you play off. So as I said, let's say we're playing man-to-man, we're picking up at half court, okay? So right away, there's two basic principles. That's the most basic you can get, right? Okay, now, what are we doing in the passing lanes, man-to-man, when we're one pass away? So you break it down by section, so to speak. One pass away. Are we full denial? Full denial? Are we in the gap? Okay? That's, those are decisions the coach has to make. Okay, 2 passes away. Well, I mean, 2 passes away at a basic level, you're pretty much, that's always going to be the help side. 2 passes away, that guy's going to be the help. So you start laying that groundwork. And then once you have that groundwork, you start working on, okay, when there's a breakdown here, how do we rotate? How do we communicate out of it, right? So, I mean, getting your team to play the team defense you want is about having principles and sticking to those principles in every situation. Sometimes, it's not going to work. But, as a coach, you need to believe in your philosophy and in your players that over the long haul, that it's going to work, right? San Antonio Spurs, Popovich, they have their system of defense, their principles, their key core values on defense that they do no matter what, whether they're winning, whether they're losing, whether they're tied. And that's the best way that I think you need to go about team defense.
So man on man, what are the common amateur mistakes? And I know there's certain ones that you mentioned about. Obviously
for me, I just think you have to force baseline. So, I mean, getting beat middle, giving up middle is just a no-go. Right away, that's the biggest one. The second biggest one for me is one pass away, the defender, let's say we have a guy on the wing with the ball, offensive player in the corner, so guy guarding the ball, guy guarding the corner. The biggest mistake I see a lot is this guy on the wing drives, and the guy from the corner on defense sucks in and helps from the strong side corner, one pass away, throws it to a corner, wide open 3. The help side always comes from the weak side, from the bottom guy. That is one of the biggest mistake I see in amateur or low-level basketball when it comes to...
How do you solve that other than yelling at that player?
Well, you work on, you simulate drills where you have a wing drive, you have a guy in the corner. So again, this comes back to, are you in full denial if you're one pass away? Or are you up in the gap, showing you're there, but then when that guy drives, you're stunting at him and recovering back to yours and knowing the help is coming from the baseline, the weak side. So that again, comes from drilling, comes from teaching the skill, saying this is our core value. We do not help one pass away on the strong side. We do not do that. That's a value, that's a principle that you as a coach have to instill in your players.
All right, so last topic, this is the hardest one, is spacing and movement. Because if you just have a bunch of 6-year-olds and you throw a ball, all of them clump together. Yeah. How do you teach them to?
Well, at a younger age, it's a lot more difficult, right? At a younger age, it's about them having fun, and of course they all hover around the ball, all those things. So at a younger age, I believe that it's better, you don't throw them out 5-on-5, right? It's too many people, too many things going on. Younger the age, less people on the court. Start them off 2-on-2 and explain to them, okay, when the ball is here, you should be here, right? And then basic 2-on-0, you can build it up before they even playing, against each other 2-on-2. You build it up with simple baseline drive, baseline drift pass. Penetrate middle, fill behind, pitch pass.
Okay, fill and drift, you gotta explain that.
Okay, so it's a very elementary drill that I like to use with young kids to explain to them the basics of spacing. Is that you set up a line on the wing and then one on the other wing. One line has balls, the other line doesn't have balls. And to start, you say, okay, you have two options, ball handler. You can either drive baseline or you can attack the middle. Okay, now, when the ball is baseline, the terminology is baseline drive. The other wing on the opposite has to fill the corner, baseline drift. Okay, so right away, they start learning that. Okay, middle drive, you're on the wing, fill up, pitch behind, right? So at a younger age, I think it's very important, like I said, start off with less people on the floor, very, very basic principles of moving off of the ball, and then they start learning that, hey, if I stay away from the ball, a lot more times than not, I'm going to become open, I'm going to get to shoot it. But if I run right up beside the guy with the ball, they're going to see that, you know, it creates nothing but chaos. So that at a younger age, like I said, 5-on-5 I think should be totally thrown out the window, and you know it should be built up over time. 2-on-0, 3-on-0, 2-on-2, 3-on-3. That's how they should start learning to play the game when it comes to offense and spacing.
So when let's say you get to the high school level, what are the mistakes people do on a 5-on-5 situation? Like I know you have a couple.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say the mistakes. Like I said, I don't know what the teams are running, what are they trying to execute, right? There's so many variables, but at a very basic level, like the saying I always say is that offense is spacing, spacing is offense, right? So by the time kids are in high school, if I was a coach, I would want my kids to understand this concept. Offense is spacing, spacing is offense, okay? It's very, very important. And the other concept that I want them to understand is that when you're executing an offense, okay, when whatever it is, it's always better to be late than early, right? When that means when you're coming off screens, when you're setting a screen, you know, patience, right? You see a lot of times, you know, they might have a good set they're running, might be a good set, but usually at the early high school level, the breakdown happens when, you know, you see them, they're panicking, they're playing very sporadic, they're running, you know, there's no timing, right? Which again, like I said, timing takes spacing, timing takes patience, you know.
So how do you fix that? Is there a way to fix it?
Yeah, of course. Again, you're building it up over time. 3-on-0, 4-on-0, 5-on-0, okay? Then you work